All right, everybody. I think we're live. Hopefully, it's working. I kind of rushed in here last second to have it set up, so I think it's working. I am Ohio State, and as always, I'm joined with Brian, who, breaking news, by the way, is going to pick up another year of commissioning and commission next year as well. So, Commissioner Brian, who's also running the number 9 ranked Houston. What is Houston? Kitty Cats? Cougars. Yeah. There we go. Houston Cougars. How are you, Brian?
Good. How are you doing?
It's been a fun day. A little later than I thought I'd be, but it is what it is. Beggars can't be choosers. So I'm ready for the holiday. I'm sure other people are doing way more interesting things than talking fantasy football. But that's what we're going to do here for a little bit. Probably keep it around an hour and then get out of here. So I don't remember what the agenda was. I know it was we were going to talk playoff picture, bowl games, scenarios for the New Year's Six. And I don't know if there was anything else. There's something else. And kind of hit on that. Oh, conference championship games. See how that shaped up and see how we kind of predict that going forward. So whatever you want to start with, let's start with that.
Let's just jump right into conference championships. We have 6 conference championships games this week. And they all have huge implications because they the Group 5, Power 5, however those groups are, ACC, Big 12, Big 10, Pac-12, and SEC, all have auto bid opportunities at play. So the winner of these conference championship games get an automatic bid into the playoff field, which is 8 teams. And then the top 3 ranked teams moving into next week will get the at-large bids. So still everything to play for. I guess we should probably mention the payout structure just a little bit because that's new this year. Don't know if everyone remembers, but we did do a vote to change some rules this past off season and pertaining to payouts. We changed it up where the structure last year was if you made the playoffs, you got $100. We changed it up to be more based on the accomplishment of winning your division and winning your conference. So each of the teams that won their division, even including the National 16 Conference teams, they got a payout already secured. I think the Power 5 groups got a $50 payout, and then the 2 National 16 teams got a $25 payout. So they essentially already made up their buy-in from this season. And then the winner of the conference championship not only gets their auto bid, but they will also secure another payout of the same value as winning their division. So that accolade kind of holds a lot of weight this week. Everyone should really be trying to strive to get in, which is pretty monumental. I guess let's start off just by kind of dissecting the games themselves, and we'll just start off with the ACC. This week is between Virginia, who I think no one really would have made it this far, and Louisville. Louisville is ranked number 7 currently, and I think Virginia is like at 36th. So they both won their divisions. I think Virginia just eked it out. I think they won most. I think they were like 7-2, and all their wins were in conference games. Ridiculous. Yeah. So, like I said earlier in the year, it all really boils down to how well you do. You can be 0-3 or 0-4, or however they were at some point in the season, and you could storm back and still have an opportunity to win money. So that you're never really out of it until probably like the last couple of weeks. And then Louisville's really not ran into much competition. I think for a while there, Syracuse was nipping at their heels, but they just continued to win. And so those two are pitted against each other. I don't know who you think off the top of your head would be probably the winner. I know I have probably going to be picking or assuming that Louisville is going to walk out of that game. What about you?
Am I allowed to go on my tirade yet?
No.
Because if I am, then I'll pick Virginia because then I get a point from that.
No diatribes. I said that.
but since those aren't allowed, I won't cheer for Virginia since I have no skin in the game at that point then. Otherwise, I would. But no, Louisville, and I think Louisville was my pick a while ago, last time we got on here. Although I know I have, I'm sure everybody else has kind of been going against Virginia all year. Virginia was one I scheduled. They were one of my non-conference games in the first couple weeks of the season, and it was one I was like, all right, sweet, here's a throw and here's an easy one. I beat them. I talked to you about that, and I was like, man, after my start, I was kind of wishing I played somebody that was going to win some games because I didn't think my team was going to be in contention. Turns out I was wrong about that, and I apparently was also wrong about Virginia because they got 7 wins when I thought that they might be struggling for like 4 or 5.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how I think they got some breaks in the scheduling. I think they probably caught Georgia Tech and Miami on weeks that they either put up, really high scores, or they, were caught with some bye weeks or whatever that got them there, but that's part of the game. Lewis, I am hearing that some people say you have an echo going on right now.
Well, tell them to knock it off. I'll play with that, and then we'll figure it out. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, hold on a second. All right, how about now? Hopefully there's no echo now. I had 2 mics going. Go figure. So hopefully that fixes that. If not, I don't know what to tell you. But that should fix it. If not, I deleted the wrong mic off of here, so hopefully I chose wisely. Yeah, I mean, Louisville, and I think Louisville's favored massively. I mean, if everybody has their lineup set this week, projection-wise, motherfucker, that's the wrong week. Virginia is going to lose by 17.5. So, and just looking at the rosters, it's the same deal. Like, I think Virginia had, like, I was like, where are these points at? Oh, let me send it live. That's probably why it didn't change, because I made changes, didn't send it to live. So now at this point right here, their echo should be gone. 9 minutes, 10 seconds in. So when you guys get to that point, let me know, and the echo should be out. But yeah, so Virginia, not a strong team. And I was even looking at them, like, they have some guys on the bench where it's like, huh, but at this point you can't pull a Joey and start guys and burn red shirts. But the wide receiver depth is on the taxi squad for this team, because I was looking, like, Darius Slayton, I guess, is who he starts. Louisville just has a much, much better lineup. So as much as I would like to see Virginia kind of pull that out, because that would throw off, well, I guess either way, because Louisville dropped out of what I thought was going to be a much higher. I thought they would be in the top, I don't know, one of the teams that would get a bid if they lost, like they'd still be high enough, that whatever you'd call that. I don't know if you have a name for it.
Oh, they'd be up they'd have to be in like the top 3 to be a lock to make it.
So I thought he'd go a little higher. But ranked at number 7 right now, then whoever wins that's just going to get the auto bid. Like I was thinking maybe if Virginia wins that, then you also Louisville be in contention for a spot. You get 2 teams out of the ACC. I think that's what I predicted a couple weeks ago. But that's definitely not going to happen now.
Yeah, so I think based on our original ones, I think I had Clemson and Georgia Tech coming out of the conference, and I think you had Louisville and Georgia Tech. And Georgia Tech is
falling apart down the stretch. Falling apart.
Yeah, they unfortunately missed out. I think last week's loss really hurt them too, where they threw themselves out of the contention really for even an at-large bid at all, being number 10 now. So yeah, they kind of fell apart with Watson not really playing up to par. I mean, he had Dalvin Cook out, but he was kind of relying on some unsustainable production from players like Eckler and other guys. He also ran into some injury problems with James Conner and Tyreek Hill over the season. So
Marlon Mack's been out the last couple of weeks as well. Yeah.
Yeah, too. So he just kind of hit some unfortunate timing for some of these things, and it essentially might have cost him the chance at the title. I mean, Virginia did hold the tiebreaker, so it would have been hard to catch him, but it's unfortunate. Let's move to Big 12. This one's probably one of the bigger ones to play because they have a lot more implications on at-large seeding. It is number 6 West Virginia versus number 3 Oklahoma State. Both teams were just kind of unreal production from some of them, especially Oklahoma State. They had one big loss, I think, in the last couple of weeks, and it was against Baylor, and they put them behind the 8 ball where they had an outside chance of really securing the Big 12 South, but they kind of put it together. And I'm not even sure how I know how they beat Iowa State for one of their few losses, but West Virginia was able to hold off Iowa State for the end of the season, which was just kind of unbelievable, to be honest. So who do you think is going to win this matchup?
I think I picked Oklahoma State. And I don't know who I had them face, and I might have picked Notre Dame foolishly. But Oklahoma State, I mean, is one of 6 teams that scored over 1,000 points on the season, which is ridiculous. Playing against a West Virginia team that I'm not so sure that they belong there, but we'll see. West Virginia's kind of come over its own. Like, David Johnson has just been a fool. Like, I don't even know what you call that down the stretch. I think he's got the only David Johnson copy. Was that right? Do you remember that? I think you said that before.
No, there are a couple others.
Oh, okay. They're very few, I think.
Yeah, there are very few.
And to have him, he's been practically useless down the stretch. I don't know. I mean, he's got a bunch of – this is probably what's helped him out is the big play wide receivers. They're either hit or miss guys. If they hit, he probably wins. If they lose, I would imagine he gets blown out. But Oklahoma State is very, very good.
Yeah, he'll need West Virginia has, I think, got some just unbelievable production from Josh Allen to kind of keep him afloat too, because the Big 12 North has just been so competitive this year with like Notre Dame and Iowa State. And Josh Allen's just kind of like, I've looked at a couple of the matchups and I saw like a couple copies of Josh Allen in these conference championships, which is a little surprising. I saw a shit ton of Lamar Jacksons, one Patrick Mahomes. I think I saw one Dak Prescott Baker Mayfield combo. But the fact that Josh Allen kind of got some teams here is quite an accomplishment. And I think when you consider some of the other quarterbacks, it makes a little bit sense. Like, he's definitely scored more consistently than Mitch Trubisky or even Jared Goff. Carson Wentz has been such a huge disappointment this year that Josh Allen kind of has vacated that role. Baker Mayfield too. And so he's kind of like put himself as like the 4th best quarterback. Fifth best quarterback. I think it would probably go Lamar, Mahomes, Watson, and then Allen.
Prescott.
Oh, Prescott too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Prescott as well.
There's probably 4 or 5 guys that are up there. But I do have you on tape from like very beginning of the season talking about Josh Allen not being a good option for some of these teams as quarterbacks. So we can go pull that up and replay that back and make you eat those words.
I did eat them. Like, he's played well enough. I mean, maybe some of it is because so many of these other quarterbacks have just been absolute dog shit. Like, Mitch Trubisky has just been almost virtually unplayable. And Patrick Mahomes going down in the middle of the season, some teams' depths were really challenged. And then Sam Darnold didn't make really much of a jump, plus being out for a good portion of the season. He just kind of has been consistent is the way I would probably put it. I definitely take the quarterbacks that are above him every play of the week, but he's kind of had some big weeks. I think he's got like 7 rushing touchdowns, which is just kind of crazy. So, yeah, I personally think, though, that Oklahoma State, though, is probably going to push this out. I think it'll probably depend on how well Lamar does against San Francisco's defense. But I really like Jacobs. Running backs, they kind of zero Aaron Jones out, and then it's kind of Dalvin versus Chubb. But his wide receivers, I think, are – oh, and they got Chris Godwin zeroing each other out. So it's probably going to fall to, like, Curtis Samuel, Juju versus Marquise Brown, and then Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson. So that's actually going to be a pretty close matchup, thinking about it.
Yeah, it'll be good. That's just, like, consistent. If you're going for the consistent team all season, it'd be Oklahoma State. If we're going off of, like, big-time production, like Godwin can put up – we just saw it last week. He's done it multiple times now this year. He can put up 30 points, and that'll win a game. So it'll be a tight one, but if we were going like based on averages and consistency, I would think Oklahoma State would have better odds. So it is what it is. I think the scenario, I guess unless we go over scenarios, but I think however it works is if Oklahoma State loses, I think they can still get it that large. There's some options there. We can go over that later, I guess.
Yeah, we'll touch base on that, but there's a lot to play for here. Like Iowa State's already a lock for the playoffs. Oklahoma State's already a lock for the playoffs. West Virginia really has to win and get in to make it. Being at 6 is kind of that cutoff point where auto bids tend to probably push you out just because there tends to be, there's not usually the conference champion is the top 5, all top 5 teams. I don't think I've seen that yet in a season, but that kind of pushes that at large down even further for West Virginia. So, so those will have some repercussions, and we'll go over the scenarios in a bit. The next one is the Big Ten. I'm not really. I'm not sure either of these. Yeah, this one's probably probably one of the bigger shit show conference games for the week. We got number 19 Penn State versus number 11 Wisconsin. I put this in the chat for Big Ten. Northwestern came so effing close to being the Big Ten West.
Out of nowhere, too. Out of nowhere.
Yeah, he really he was kind of like this middling team after the cross-divisional conference play. And then he just put together like 5 super solid weeks. And the 1 week before he went on that hot streak, he lost by like 4 points to Wisconsin. And that's the only reason he was out of the no, he lost by 7 points to Wisconsin. And that's the only reason he's not in this game. So that's super disappointing. He also just beat Purdue by like 5 points in week 12, and had he not done that, Purdue would have been in this spot. So Big Ten West has been this like revolving shit show for the last couple weeks, with Purdue being in the driver's seat, then Wisconsin being back in the driver's seat, and then Northwestern kind of just coming up so close where we weren't even really considering them at some point. And then Penn State, I think, they just kind of cruised to the last couple weeks of the season. I think their talent just kind of went out. Yeah.
It's been interesting. It was weird because I was like, oh, sweet. Like, if you look at MFL Power Rankings, not the rankings that you put together, but I'm actually the toughest team based on that stats, just for scoring the most points in there and all that other nonsense. So, but Penn State, I mean, based on wins, obviously, I think they've had it locked up for a while. Wisconsin was the odds-on favorite to start the season, so for them to finish there is good. Only issue with going into this game, these are played this week, right? If James Conner doesn't go again this week, which he's missed the last 2 weeks, and then I think 2 of the last 3 or 3 of the last 4, something like that. So if he doesn't play this week, Wisconsin's other running backs are not good, I don't think. And so it'll be like he's going to have to start
Eckler and Zeke, I think.
So it'll be Eckler and Zeke, which is not the same as – so, I mean, I think that'll be the hole that gets him, is not having somebody there. Same thing if, like, Juju doesn't get healthy. Oh, even that, he's got Duck Hodges thrown to him now. So it'll probably be Gallup, Hill, and Sutton, or Gallup, Hill, and
Thomas.
It's an interesting lineup. He's got a lot of shit to play with to get the right lineup, and I'm not sure he will. So I think that puts the edge at Penn State. The only saving grace is the quarterback play because Penn State's gonna have to roll with Mitch Trubisky. That's the only thing that'll tilt this in Wisconsin's favor.
Yeah, and they're going to zero Zeke out, so that kind of puts the margin even that much lower for Wisconsin because Penn State's going to roll out Chubb and Zeke, and then I don't think they have other overlaps, but Cooper Kupp. Oh, they have both have Tyreek Hill that they'll play. Cooper Kupp's been kind of like non-existent, and he's got Jared Goff throwing like these ducks in the air the last couple of weeks, so I really can't trust him. Cortland Sutton might not even play with an injured ankle. So there's like some limits to each side, and it's going to be interesting to see who plays what. Wisconsin, if he gets a big game from Deshaun Watson, could very well just take it just because of how many points that could potentially be, and you don't think you're going to get anything close to that by Mitchell Trubisky. So it'll be interesting. The winner of this game is the one that's going into playoffs. They don't have any shot at large bids. So super interesting matchup. But it's kind of on that shit show level where I don't think either team is really at their strongest at this point in the season. So it'll be interesting to see. Moving to Pac-12. Pac-12 has got this super familiar lineup. I was looking at some of the history on this. Oregon and Colorado. Oregon and Colorado have played 6 times previously in the NCFF history. Oregon's got a record of 2-4 against Colorado. They both have won conference championships before. I think actually Oregon's won the Pac-12 conference championship for the last 2 seasons, so they're going on a potential three-peat here. Colorado's got one of the winningest coaches in all of NCFF history with like 49 wins, which is just surreal. And Oregon has gone through some coaching changes, but is one of the most winningest programs in NCFF history. So there's a lot of historical context to this. Same thing as the Big Ten. It's pretty much a winner gets in. But I think based on our projections this year, I think we were saying Utah and Oregon were going to be the favorites to win, right?
Yeah, I picked one of the teams from Oregon, so they're both up there. I think Utah is the favorite. Although it got dicey there for a little bit on both sides. I felt like it was like, again, another revolving door at the top of the divisions there. Arizona was there briefly for a couple weeks. Utah was there all season, it seemed like, and then had some – I don't know what he did to try to start Mahomes when he busted his kneecap and then didn't play whatever other option he had at quarterback.
Yeah, he didn't. He was considering burning Kyler's red shirt, but he decided against it, and I think that probably cost him the conference championship.
I think Finley was there, so he took a donut instead of somebody else. I don't know. There was something weird with Utah. But at the end of the day, number 4, he's going to make playoffs. He's going to make playoffs.
No.
You heard it here first.
No. We'll go with scenarios, but there's no way Utah's making the playoffs. I'm just going to say that. No way.
At number 4?
Because Houston's going to jump them.
Oh, here we fucking go. NIU, baby. NIU. I thought I messed something up, and I'm like, what's going on here? Like, good Lord. Pulling that garbage out. All right. So anyways, where was I? It was just a little bit shit show. So it was the same way too in the other, like the Huskies were there for a little bit and they weren't even on my board at all.
No.
So props to them for being up there at least or in the discussion. Couldn't hold on. Quarterback play most likely was the reasoning for that. I would also assume he had Cooper Kupp in the lineup, so that probably hurt him. But yeah, the teams that we kind of thought were going to be there were there at the end. As far as matchups go, I didn't really look into it. On paper, just like looking at stats, it looks like Oregon's got the better team. But Colorado is tough. Like, I mean, they've got You're talking Lamar Jackson, who's been unfreaking believable the last 2 weeks, mixed with a Fournette and one of Gurley or Mixon, and then Brown, Galladay, and I guess Mark Andrews would be the start there, which is pretty solid. And I don't know anything about Oregon's team because I can't get my stupid phone to go back to.
Yeah, they got Patrick Mahomes. They could play Kyler if they wanted. Saquon, who's been much of a disappointment this year, but he's also got Josh Jacobs and Aaron Jones to kind of cover that, and then he's got Chris Godwin and Michael Thomas. So I think based on that, I'm probably picking Oregon, just because of how that lineup is set up at wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who the Chiefs play. Mahomes will have to have a good week. No Barkley, don't not play Barkley, and then roll kind of.
Why don't you want to play Barkley?
I wouldn't touch him. I don't want any part of him. I don't think he's healthy.
What?
No, thank you. I would start Mahomes, Jacobs, Jones, Godwin, Thomas, and George Kittle.
And Kittle?
All day. Sit Barkley. But that's just me. And I didn't make the playoffs or the top 25, so don't listen to me.
Such a bitter man.
I would have if your system knew how to count.
Yeah.
If it didn't stop counting after week 12, it would have worked perfectly. But yeah, who am I? Yeah. So there. I mean, the Pac-12 is loaded. I think the best teams kind of are there, with the exception of Utah. But Colorado is a really good team. I would go with your stats. You pulled out that number 2 and 4. I like that. I think that means Colorado is better at the game. I would think better. He's got Oregon's number. Maybe when you start to do that stuff, like you kind of pick up on lineup tendencies, who people are more likely to play. You know, that's one of the things. I don't touch my lineup till like last second. I always play with it. I think I stuck. I was doing that this week. I told you I stuck in my. Who do I have? Deebo Samuel and AJ Brown. I had him put in my lineup, thinking like he thought I was going to start those guys. So maybe a little gamesmanship there, a little bit of a rivalry since they played that many times. But yeah, Colorado's a very good team, and I think it's a little bit more solid, but they're both very, very good teams.
Yeah. So again, just like Big Ten, whoever wins gets in. The loser does not have a shot at the playoffs. SEC. SEC is kind of like in similar vein to Big 12. They have a bit more variability in terms of outcomes. The 2 teams that are playing are number 5 Georgia and number 2 LSU. I think at the beginning of the season we had Vanderbilt.
What a mistake.
And I know I had LSU. I think you had Bama. So Vanderbilt actually was right there. They had a 4-point loss in week 7 to Kentucky, and that ultimately ended up costing him a shot at the conference championship. So kudos to Joey for fucking it up in spectacular fashion once again.
Terrible start to the season for him, by the way.
Yeah, he turned it around, but it's just not enough.
But yeah, he jumped. He was one of the teams he won this week. He leapfrogged me, but he jumped with something spectacular, like 11 spots, which is ridiculous.
That's because he beat undefeated 11-win Georgia. So he got kind of rounded out his resume in spectacular fashion. But back to the 2 teams that play. Georgia 11-1. I think the only one loss team in the league at the moment. So they had a spectacular season, an ungodly type duo for quarterback with Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. SEC East is in trouble for the next couple of years. But they play a really good, solid LSU team. Frank's team is just kind of chugged along. They kind of put out 90-point weeks almost every freaking week, it seems like. Especially the last couple of weeks with he's been playing a lot of Dak Prescott, but he changed it up last week with a timely pick of Baker Mayfield to help him squeak past Bama. He's gotten credible production from Christian McCaffrey. He's gotten Michael Thomas. DK Metcalf, I don't think is the league winner, but he's definitely helped that team prop itself up. And I think this is probably the best matchup just because of who these two teams have playing. Dak Prescott is playing really well. Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, whoever Georgia chooses is playing really well. Christian McCaffrey is, bound to get 20 plus points at this point in a given week. And then I think LSU might have a disadvantage at wide receiver comparing him to Georgia because I think he's got Tyreek, Cooper Kupp, Cortland Sutton might not play. So it might actually end up being a wash. So it might just fall to like who's quarterback and who's running back produces more. And I guess I leave it to see who you would pick out of those two teams, Lewis.
I'm not even going to look at the rosters, honestly, because I made this mistake once already and went against Frank and picked Bama to win this division down here. So I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. I'm fully picking Frank to win this game. He probably, I mean, on paper, you just read all those players, and so Georgia's most likely the better team. But Frank just kind of seems to win games and then talk the talk to like back it up. Like he was very close. Like I don't know if he was talking about the Alabama game ahead of time, but Alabama almost nipped him this week. But he's still just good enough for me. He was at that 90-point mark, and I mean it's tough to get there consistently. I haven't followed Georgia as much because they don't talk or anything, so I don't have a reason to go look and see how they do on a weekly basis. But I know with Dak and McCaffrey, because those are guys I have that's putting you at 60 points a week. The rest of it is then you've got 4 players that if you can get 10 points out of each of those, you're going to score 100 points. And he's picking out of I can't remember. I think he's got Kamara as an option. You said DK Metcalf. I'm trying to think. So I think it's just way too easy. His path to 100 points is very, very, very good. So I'm just going to pick Frank and roll with it. He probably is going to lose now because I picked him. Sorry, bud.
I think Frank probably wins too. I like his running backs better than Georgia. It'll be interesting to see if Georgia does like some stack play this week by having Patrick Mahomes play with Tyreek and see if they connect up. And that will kind of give him some added points per se, depending on how well Lamar Jackson does against San Francisco. But Cortland Sutton being kind of injured, it's talk of like Drew Lock potentially starting this week. It could be really dicey for that Denver offense to do anything. And then we've already talked about Cooper Kupp being this kind of, he was so good at the beginning of the season, but Jared Goff has just kind of taken that team in a whole different direction. I'm going to probably hitch my horse to LSU and say that they are able to push it out, especially with Dak Prescott being so consistent. Christian McCaffrey is kind of just otherworldly at this point. This game I did mention the loser isn't out of the playoffs. Actually, LSU's locked up a spot, so they're really fighting for seeding and some of the extra money. Georgia does have the ability to get into the playoffs, and we'll go over scenarios right after we cover the N16.
We don't need to really discuss the Northern Illinois next.
Northern Illinois next. That's fine. Just kind of make a clarifying point. The winner of this game does not have any guarantees. There's no auto bids for playoffs. So they really have to make the most out of their opportunities. I think the fact that they get to play a week kind of gives them some added bonus to leapfrog a few teams, which is the case for my team, Houston. Northern Illinois, I don't think has any opportunity based on scenarios to jump into the playoffs, but they will have the opportunity to jump higher for a better bowl game if they were to win in this week. Personally, I'm looking at this matchup rather favorably, I think. We both have Lamar Jackson, so that kind of output is neutralized. We both have Alvin Kamara, and I think that's one of Northern Illinois' better running back options, so that kind of is neutralized. I'll be playing Dalvin Cook this week, and then so it really boils down to the wide receivers. I think his wide receivers are
Yours suck.
mine suck.
Yes.
I mean, they're not.
You gonna start him this week? You've been starting freaking.
Fuck. I haven't started them yet.
Kiki QT, so you might as well throw in. You were ripping on Trayvon last week when I told you that. What does he do? He goes out.
Yeah, he caught one. He caught one fucking pass for a touchdown. The guy is garbage. That's 7 points. Yeah, and I played Debo and got more points.
Yeah, well, I didn't know you burnt the red shirt, so I wasn't sure that was an option.
So he's got Robbie Anderson, Cortland Sutton, Terry McLaurin as his big wide receivers. He also is playing Philip Lindsay this week. So the margins are a little smaller. Northern Illinois is one of the few 10-win teams this season. They've done a spectacular job kind of closing it out. So we'll see. It'll all come down to wide receiver play this week. So with that said, let's kind of review the scenarios. I don't know if you want to pull up the screen that's sharing the spreadsheet.
Yeah, so we'll do this, but for those that are actually following, if there are people following, I don't know where my counter is. When we switch to the screen, if we don't have sound again, tell us instead of letting us go for a half hour or 45 minutes with no sound. But we're not going to go for a half hour, 45 minutes. I got to get out of here soon. So we're going to make this hopefully short and sweet. So if you got sound, let us know. If not, let us know and we'll kill it. But what we're going to do is pull up, I think this is a fancy version of the chart that Brian was passing around earlier, and just run through scenarios.
Yeah. So this is a spreadsheet that I shared earlier today. Have had a few people kind of talk about it and kind of had questions, kind of work out how it has. So it has the scores that are where everyone stands as of week 12. Then it breaks down all 64 scenarios for the conference championship games. So it looks at who's going to potentially win, and then it kind of breaks out who is going to fall where. And so we kind of surmise those into these chances to kind of break down who holds what. We'll just kind of run through those really quickly. So we've mentioned with the conference championship games, Iowa State, LSU, Oklahoma State are all locks to make the playoffs. They're really going to play for seeding. So depending on who wins what game will determine who's going to be the number 1 seed, number 2 seed, number 3 seed. And that's important for them because then they get to ultimately choose their opponent for the first round of the playoffs. So if Iowa State were to get the number 1 seed, they could theoretically pick a perceived weaker team. Sorry to mention this, but if Virginia makes it in, they might want to pick them to play in the first round of the playoffs. So it's just a little added bonus. They can choose that. So there's a bit of that to play for. Really, the breakdown ends up being Iowa State, since they don't play this week, if LSU and Oklahoma State loses, they will retain that number 1 seed. If LSU or Oklahoma State wins, they're going to be the number 1 seed. Talked a little bit about Utah and where they stand. They really fall because they do not play this week. They're really reliant on primarily, I think it falls to the N16 team. If I don't win, he's pretty much going to make it into the playoffs. And then kind of depending on who wins what conference championship game, that will kind of break out who will what seed they will place in. Georgia, they're really kind of need me to lose or they need to win their game. So they have a higher than 50% chance of making the playoffs just because of that simple fact of me potentially being a loss and they also losing would make them in. West Virginia, Louisville are all really on the win and they get in. West Virginia does have a bit of variance. Same with Louisville on who is what seed they'll get. And so that'll kind of just play out to who wins what. Myself, kind of talked about it, win and probably need a little bit of help from LSU or Oklahoma State winning to make it in because I'm really reliant on leapfrogging Utah and Georgia. Wisconsin, Colorado, all they need to win to get in. Same with Penn State, Oregon, and then all the way down to Virginia. They just need to win and they will be in the playoffs. Moving over to the New Year's 6. Teams that make the playoffs have 0. Teams that don't have any chance at making a New Year's Six bowl game have a 0% chance as well. So some of these teams like Utah, if they don't make the playoffs, they're likely going to have a guarantee of making a New Year's Six bowl game. And the reason why these are important is that the payout structure is based on a top 25 finish by the end of week 16. So that will be important for if they win this game, they have the chance of getting a higher top 25 finish and means a better chance at getting a higher payout. Most of the teams that are up at the top don't have much of a chance of falling out of the top 25, but some of the teams near the bottom, as I'm sure Lewis will be very cavalier in expressing, have all to play for and making up and getting a smaller payout. UCF was a pretty stellar team. They didn't win their division, but they played really well. They beat a lot of really good teams this year. And so they're a lock to make a New Year's Six bowl game. It's really going to depend on who wins the conference championship and where they fall in that seeding, but they'll probably play in like a Rose Bowl or something like that. I know Ross gave me a breakdown of it. Let me see if I can pull that up. So yeah, they have like a 50% chance at playing a Peach Bowl game, 25% chance at playing Orange Bowl, 19% chance at making a Sugar Bowl, and a 6% chance at a Rose Bowl game. Georgia Tech, number 10 right now, they have a 50% chance at an Orange Bowl game, playing a few different teams, 25% chance at Peach Bowl, and 25% chance at Cotton. But it all really will depend on who they play. So they have some opportunity to play any of these teams with their seeding falling where it is. Purdue, same kind of thing. They really will matter on which teams leapfrog them in conference championships. Same with Vanderbilt, where they could even slide back in terms of the rankings after next week just because they simply don't play. And then some of these other teams down here. Notre Dame, TCU, they get a little iffier because they also have the opportunity to be in a non-New Year's Six game. So the New Year's Six bowl games are all the top 12 teams outside of the playoffs. And then anyone that's outside of those 6 bowl games is pretty much just an other bowl. And it's really just an opportunity to have that potential chance of getting into the top 25 by the end of the season. So they have Notre Dame has a 6% chance of being the top ranked other bowl game. And we don't name these ones just for the simple fact that they're usually trash named bowl games anyway, like the Camping Bowl of what?
That's offensive.
That's offensive?
Yeah, my bowl game has as much pride as any of these other ones, so I want to name.
You get the Poinciana Bowl. There you go.
I'll take it.
So yeah, that's how to read the sheet per se. Most of these teams down here, they kind of have their opponents really figured out. I think the only one that really dictates where they fall is Virginia, because if Virginia jumps up in front of them with an auto bid, it kind of shuffles everything down. So let's use Lewis's for an example. He plays either Oregon State or Texas in his two chances at a bowl opponent. So
give me Oregon State.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So you'll probably be actually rooting for I think you probably want Virginia in.
Yeah, I would definitely want them in if I benefited the 1 point from them getting in and getting the win. Then I could get the 0.610 freaking NCFF points that I need to drop to jump all the way from 27 to 24 because the back end's that close. Most ridiculous thing I've ever seen, but don't mind me. I'd actually get 2 points because if Virginia wins, I'd also get points from Wisconsin. Then who knows? Sky's the limit at that point. I could probably drop into the top 15.
I said no diatribes, Lewis. You're going rogue now. Yeah, that is something we've talked about. Lewis did bring up a great thing and put it in rule proposals. So we'll just take a very quick second before we wrap up to talk about that. We had some different, because of the changes in rules, this wasn't something we necessarily perceived as being needed to address, and it just wasn't. So we're talking about including those PowerPoints to kind of carry through the entire season up through week 16 for next year. Just trying to work out probably the logistics of changing up how the rankings are tracked, because it'll take a little bit of finessing, because currently MFL, all the stuff we pull automatically from MFL is pulled from the weekly results, which is carried through week 12. Some of these other things like playoffs aren't retained in that same information stream. So we'll have to find some interesting things next year to probably kind of quantify that in. So that is something we're looking at. So that'll get him. That'll put pacifier in baby's crying mouth here. Hopefully.
I'm busy seeing if I want to play Oregon State or Texas, and then I'll come up with an answer.
Okay. I'd imagine you probably want to play Oregon State, wouldn't you?
He's got Lamar Jackson. I don't really want to play Lamar Jackson. DJ
Chubb.
Yeah, I probably match up better with
Sure.
Oregon State, just looking at it without having to see what Texas has.
Texas has got Prescott, Josh Jacobs, no Marlon Mack though, so that might be a benefit. But they also have Calvin Ridley, Cortland Sutton. Yeah, you might want Texas actually.
Yeah, hard pass. No, I don't. I want Oregon State. It's funny though, because we did this. We ran, or not we. You ran the projections prior to Monday Night Football. I think it was Sunday night. I think you ran Sunday morning early, super early. I was sick, so I was up whenever you did that, and I was like, "Holy shit! I'm in the top 25. Here we go!" Like, party started, which is half the problem of my tirade, because I saw that where I was supposed to be, and then you took it away. And then, anyways, so like when you start doing that, then we initially ran some, or we again, you ran some bowl game projections kind of for everybody, and then kind of did mine. And I was in. There was Alabama was an option. Of course, at the time I was in the top 25. There's Alabama, somebody else, but it's just kind of funny because I was matching up, trying to see who I'd rather play, and you come like, at least on my experiences, I came across a lot of teams that had a lot of the same players as me, a lot of DJ Sharks, a lot of Dak Prescotts, a lot of Derrick Henrys. So it's kind of funny how certain players kind of group together in the same tiers within the ranks. So I know you talked about a lot of Lamar Jacksons, a lot of Josh Allen's up top, and then it seemed like a lot of Dak, a lot of DJ Shark, a lot of Derrick Henry, guys that kind of had solid seasons but aren't on that like next level of like elite players in the format.
Yeah, so that's a very common. Actually, I think last year, like Patrick Mahomes was carrying teams all the way through, and then a couple of years previously, it was like Zeke and Gurley were carrying teams all the way through to being really good. And I think it's just something to take into consideration, like when you look at preseason polling, is to really kind of weigh how much those starting lineups can be the margins can be a lot bigger. Like a Christian McCaffrey is over a season going to be way better than a Marlon Mack or a even this year Todd Gurley. He was just so much better. He was even better, so much more than even having a Saquon Barkley, which is kind of I go back to one of my soapboxes is spending so much on one player in a format like this can just set you back if they don't produce. And Saquon, while very good, just hasn't produced this year, and teams struggled. But some of these teams kind of fall into these tiers, and then if you see like what you had, like you have a Christian McCaffrey copy, he helped your team be really, really good, but maybe not to the same level as some of these other teams because they might have had some of that depth to get over like a bye week or an injury, and those are kind of play into some of those factors. And then a lot of it also has to do with scheduling. Right. Sometimes you just get kind of lucky with who you play that one week, and they just kind of, fall apart. Their team falls apart, or an injury happens, and it's kind of the same thing that happens, in fantasy football just in general and who you play. But it can kind of be the margins in this league are just so small, and you have to really think about that. You're competing against 86 other teams, and that can just be so hard to, edge out other teams that way. So super interesting. I think a lot of people hopefully enjoyed this season so far. If people haven't have their season completed, I know Ross sent out an email. Please fill out the end of year survey. It helps immensely with kind of telling us how we're doing. Helps us have some discussions in the early part of the off season with rule changes to have those set and ready for proposals by, I think, like April is when they have them tend to be voted on. And then it also helps us with red shirts. So this is your opportunity to let us know who you'd like to use those 4 red shirts on. Please make sure they haven't started a game for you. And if you are still playing, please make sure they don't start a game for you until that point, because we do check these regardless if you have put a player that's valid or if you haven't. We're going to check them. Medicals will all be checked over the early part of the off season to make sure they're all valid. You can't mess with them
They should
anyway.
Should they not? Would they not have? They would have been eligible to go. I'm just trying, unless it was somebody that already had a medical and you put them on.
Yeah.
There, that would be the only thing I could think of. Since that locked. But good Lord, someone brought that up today. Was that today? And I almost fainted because I was like, could you imagine? You have the whole season. You've got the dude on medical red shirt, and then you're going to take him off of IR just for shits and giggles, because you have an IR violation on NFL. Like,
no,
that'd have been the end. Of the
yeah. No, I think he was just making sure that he was valid, even though he lost that tag and he was playing an NFL game. I mean, those are the types of questions you should have at week 8, week 9 when we're going to have that cutoff. And I've announced it multiple times, but sometimes you don't notice those things. Didn't notice those things until they actually apply to you, and you look at your team, you're like, oh shit, N'Keal Harry doesn't have an IR status anymore. Am I going to lose that medical? So I understand those things, and happy to discuss them. But everyone should be valid. The only instances where they might not be is if they had a player like Carry-On. We have a few instances, I think, of Carry-On being in IR, and we have to check to make sure that he didn't start 4 or more games. Or I think there might be a Geis or 2 on people's rosters that had a medical last year, and that would make him ineligible for this year. So those are the things we track, and we really kind of are hoping over the years people kind of figure those rules out, and they kind of look at those and say, oh yeah, Darius Geis already got a medical. I'm not going to put him on IR. There's no point. That'll just kind of get built, hopefully, as people play longer.
The chances of that happening are less likely than the chances of Houston making it to the playoffs.
Now, hold up a second. I think I have a pretty legit shot, and I'm pretty excited. Goal is to win the conference championship, and the fact that I am essentially 1 game from potentially making the playoffs is pretty exciting. Didn't think my team would be at this point, but I will take pride in the fact that my team ultimately was better than Vanderbilt's this year. So that's a big benefit.
All right. Well, I was going to say, I'm trying to think. I don't know what else there is, but I've got dinner, so I'm going to butt out here. Other than that, I'm trying to think, what was I going to ask you? Are we going to do this again? Or are we going to do, I don't know what we would call it, championship parade or something before the championship parade? Or what are your thoughts here? I'm just trying to think. Because I know in the off season we've got not a bug. My fucking cat's fucking ape shit. I'm not a bunch, but a good bit of different things planned. And I know there's a good bit of things that we can do from the coaching, whatever you call that thing.
Yep, coaching carousel.
Carousel. Fish drop my wallet everywhere. I'm trying to think what else is there. We'll have vacancies. I know that, a little bit of movement in there.
I don't think it's worth maybe necessarily discussing like 4 matchups per se. So maybe we'll just save the next one to probably be maybe after buy-ins are due for next year, just to make sure that we kind of discuss those things, discuss which vacancies are there, talk about the coaching carousel process and how people are filled, and maybe kind of discuss where teams are ranked at that point for FCS. And that probably would be a good, robust podcast at that point. But
you're like no fun.
I'm sure we'll have.
You got to figure something out. You're like no fun. I thought you get these commissioner duties off your back. You'd be more open to do so. So I'll work on them, everybody. I said, I I know I give the people what they want. I know they want to see you more often. So we'll come up with something. We'll figure something out. I'm sure.
I'm only gonna do it if Big Red asked for it. That's pretty much what it comes down to. So if Big Red is clamoring for something, I'll give it to him.
All right, you heard it here first. Northern Illinois this week by 17.
Bullshit. All right, I'll see you later.
See you guys.